From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Monday, July 7, 2025. It's the biggest trial of the year and now the most suspenseful as the jury in Erin Patterson's triple murder case enters its 7th day of deliberations. What's going on? Legal affairs correspondent Ellie Dudley joins us from Morwell in Victoria's Latrobe Valley. There's a ritual every morning in the Victorian town of Morwell. As the morning fog clears and the temperature creeps up past zero and into low single figures, a crowd of people traipses towards the courthouse. Lawyers, journalists, magistrates, registrars, cops and regular people accused of crimes.
Everyone's very layered up, thermal layers, puffer jackets, beanies, scarves.
Ellie Dudley's our legal affairs correspondent, and along with one of our senior reporters, John Ferguson, she's been part of that crowd traipsing into the court every morning for the past 10 weeks. It's the business of low-level justice. People who've been charged with drink driving or offensive behaviour, fighting in the street, small-time burglary. This morning, Monday, 7 July, the 30 or so accused on the list are overwhelmingly men. But the most recognisable accused before the Latrobe Valley Law Courts is a woman, Erin Patterson, a 50-year-old mum of two from the nearby town of Leongatha, who's accused of a crime that's being followed around the world, allegedly poisoning her estranged husband's 4 elderly relatives with death cap mushrooms she allegedly foraged from the bases of oak trees around this very woodland.
Outside the courthouse in Morwell, the Latrobe Valley Law Courts, there's a really large courtyard, which I imagine usually is empty, but at the moment it's packed with journalists, television crews, people setting up camp, waiting for this verdict to be handed down.
Patterson has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder. The trial was initially set down for about 6 weeks, but these things never quite go to plan. And after 2 months of evidence and a couple of weeks of legal discussion, the judge and lawyers for both sides summing up, the jury was sent out to deliberate. Ellie, everyone I know is full of curiosity about the jury's deliberations, so today we're going to ask and answer some of the big questions. First, what happens when the jury reaches a verdict?
So if and when the jury reaches a verdict, they've been told that there's a buzzer in the room that they're currently deliberating in. They press that buzzer and that sends a note to the staff of the judge to let the judge know that a verdict has been reached. It's the same process if the jury has a question that they want to ask of the judge based on any of the evidence that's been put before them throughout this trial.
Okay, and if it's guilty, what will be the next step?
The next step will be sentencing. We know that when it comes to sentencing hearings, they're often quite drawn out. The judge, I imagine, will want to hear victim impact statements, and then Judge Christopher Beale will come to a decision on how she should be sentenced and how long she'll spend in prison.
What about if it's not guilty?
She walks free. So I imagine that it would be quite a frenzy if she walks straight out the front of the courthouse on the day if she is found not guilty. She'll be able to go home. We've seen photos already of her house in Leongatha that's been wrapped up in a thick black tarpaulin-y sort of material. It seems like it's been wrapped possibly multiple times to prevent anyone taking any photos, perhaps, if that was the intention of her, if she were to be found not guilty and if she were to return home.
So what do we know about what's been happening in that jury room?
Oh, Claire, it's the million-dollar question. As a journalist who's been down there for a long time, everyone's asking, when are they going to come back? What do you think they're thinking? But obviously we don't know. So they're being sequestered. They have no contact with the outside world. They're in a complete, total media blackout. They get transported from their accommodation where they're all staying together at a hotel to court from Mondays to Saturdays, where they sit and deliberate from 10:30 to 4:15 with an hour and 15-minute lunch break in the middle of the day where they can't return a verdict. And then they get transported back at night. And so they're not deliberating on Sundays, but they are deliberating Monday to Saturdays, meaning that we could get a verdict at any time on Monday through Saturday.
The judge, Christopher Beale, sent the jury out on Monday. Here's a voice actor reading what he told the jury then.
You should only discuss the case with each other, and you should only do that when you are all together in the privacy of the jury room here in court. Don't discuss when you're at the hotel. Don't get into little groups and have discussions about the case.
On Monday morning, the jury begins its 7th day of deliberations. Is that unusual?
No, it's not unusual, particularly in a case like this when they have seen so much evidence. This was a trial that was supposed to last for 4 to 6 weeks, and I think we got almost up to 10 weeks of evidence for them to look at. So no, it's not unusual, and we can also see that in past cases that have been decided. So Kelly Lane, who was accused of murdering her baby, the jury took 6 days to convict her. George Pell, who was accused of child sex abuse, the jury deliberated for more than 4 days before he was convicted, a conviction that, as we know, was later overturned. For Northern Territory Police Officer Zachary Rolfe, it took just 7 hours for him to be acquitted of murdering Kumanjai Walker.
In another high-profile matter where Bruce Lehrman was accused of sexually assaulting Brittany Higgins, he pleaded not guilty. The jury had been deliberating for 5 days when one of them was caught with unauthorised materials in the jury room. The judge told the court in that matter an official was in the room after a day's deliberations and knocked a folder to the floor, and while picking up the materials that fell down, found a research report which hadn't been part of the evidence, something the jurors weren't allowed to have in there. The jury was discharged and prosecutors declined to have another trial. So even now, I guess, Ellie, we can assume the jury's under close scrutiny?
Yeah, so there are jury keepers in this case. So their job is just as it sounds, it's to keep the jury and to ensure that they help them facilitate reaching a decision without any external influences on that decision except for the evidence that is in front of them. The judge also did give a warning to the jury not to reveal how their numbers were falling.
Here's a voice actor reading the judge's words.
There's one thing that must not appear in any question that you ask, and that's the numbers. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Sometimes a jury returns to court and tells the judge they just can't get to a unanimous verdict. Now, in Victoria, on some offences, a judge can accept a majority verdict, but not murder. It has to be unanimous. If a jury is deadlocked, the judge can come in with something called a black direction. That's named after a High Court decision that said judges can tell a deadlocked jury to go back into the jury room and keep going. The High Court said a juror who holds out and goes with his or her conscience is not breaching his or her oath. That's a legitimate way of serving justice. So if Justice Beale gives a black direction, he'll be careful not to put pressure on any juror to crumble and go with the majority. After the break, the big question of motive the jury must decide. On the surface, this seems like a relatively straightforward matter. The Kelly Lane case, which we discussed earlier, that was a 6-month trial. This one was relatively short, and the charges are all the same because they all relate to the same meal. Beef Wellington served in July 2023 at a family lunch to which Erin Patterson had also invited her husband Simon. He declined to attend. There are 3 counts of murder relating to Simon's parents Don and Gail and his auntie Heather Wilkinson. She was Gail's sister.
To prove that the accused is guilty of murder, the prosecution must prove the following 4 elements beyond reasonable doubt. 1. The accused caused the death of the deceased by serving the deceased a poisoned meal.
The judge said it wasn't disputed that Patterson served beef Wellingtons that she had made that were poisoned with death cap mushrooms or that this caused their deaths.
2. The accused's alleged conduct was conscious, voluntary and deliberate. 3. At the time of the alleged conduct, the accused intended to kill or cause really serious injury to the deceased. 4. The accused killed the deceased without lawful justification or excuse.
Deliberate is the most important word there because that's what's in dispute here. The defence says Patterson accidentally included death cap mushrooms in the meal eaten by everyone. and that she vomited after the meal and didn't become seriously unwell. The Crown says Patterson made a death cap-free version of the meal for herself and poisoned the 4 plates intended for her guests. The big missing element is a motive. The Crown has not presented the jury with an alleged motive, but says Erin Patterson was hostile to Simon and his parents after a dispute about the separation. The defence says, in fact, Erin Patterson had a motive not to murder. The Pattersons and Wilkinsons were part of her very small support network in this country town. The judge summed it up like this.
For some murders, there may be evidence of motive, but some murders occur for no apparent reason. The motives of such murders might only ever be known to the accused.
The jury have heard a lot of evidence and a lot of summing up of that evidence from the defence, from the prosecution, and then the judge's charge alone that was more than 300 pages. So they understand that the information that they're processing and the evidence that they're assessing isn't to be taken lightly. And I think that it's clear from the time that they're taking that they want to make sure that the verdict they reach is the right one.
Ellie Dudley is the Australian's legal affairs correspondent, and she's ready and waiting at the Latrobe Valley Law Courts along with our team. The Australian subscribers will get an alert on their phones as soon as the jury reaches a verdict, and you can be the first to read all the news and our analysis by joining us at theaustralian.com.au.